The Browns, they're putrid. They're the worst team in the NFL.
The season, the 2024 season is over.
Lamar Jackson can't win the playoffs. He'll win a third MVP, though, so that's great. Drew Sample is the most important piece of the Bengals offense next year.
Go Joe Burrow. He deserves to be MVP. I wish he was the Browns quarterback. Kind of mean that.
If you're looking for the most reactionary, silly, and unserious show on the internet, then you're home. Live from Hamilton, Ohio, it's Off the Bench by Chatterbox Sports on 1410 ESPN Radio.
All right, everybody, welcome in. Happy Monday. It's Off the Bench presented by United Dairy Farmers. We are off and rolling, and man, my face is really close to that camera. It's just like, bam, right there.
It's a good picture, though. It's a good picture, though.
But we're off and rolling here on a Monday. Hope everyone had a great weekend. Justin Kenner, Elliot Rearing, and of course, we got our guy Reed back in studio. Casey's holding down the producer side, of course. But guys, I hope you had a great weekend. Happy Monday.
Yeah, I had a great weekend. Thank you. Happy Monday to you as well. It was fun watching football. It was a fun little weekend, and we're going zooming in and out. It's like we're just zooming in and out, Ken Dog. I love it. But yeah, it was a great weekend. I hung out with Elliot on Friday.
We did.
What'd you guys do?
Had a little party in Hamilton. My father was singing at the Hub here in Hamilton, and we all had a good time listening to some music. It was special. It was a great weekend. I will say, again, very, very cold outside right now. Very, very cold. That's the only knock I have on this beautiful weekend. Got very, very cold.
So I really like Elliot's hoodie. I love the way Elliot dresses. He's always a fashionista, of course. But I have to look over and ask more about what you're wearing. What do you got going on there? What do you got going on there? That seat, I don't think has ever had a shirt look like that sitting in that chair before. So I want to see more.
It should. Jacob's normally well dressed, but he's never been this well dressed. I got this actually this weekend from my friend. We bond together to hate Columbus Polytech. So every year he gets me a Michigan-themed attire. Sometimes it's a Jim Harbaugh ornament. Other times it's a shirt that has the 4 straight wins that Michigan has over Columbus Polytech.
What's the bottom say?
It says, the Ohio State are Michigan.
Interesting.
Listen.
We'd say that on radio, right? Michigan.
Well, it's Michigan with a B. It's Michigan with a B.
It's our Michigan.
And as you guys know, I mean, I'm very strict about the words we use on this show. So if we could just dial that back. I know we were just dialed in, but if we could dial it back a little with the words that we use on the show, I'd appreciate it. But no, we got fun day today. Coming out of the NFL playoff action over the weekend, national championship tonight. And then, of course, there's a baseball story I want to get into, not only a story, but the Dodgers just continue to do Dodger things. And people talk about the Dodgers are ruining baseball, but I'm curious, who's ruining baseball more? Is it the Dodgers and the really rich owners that are just taking any player that they want, or is it ownership like the Reds and the ownership like the Pirates at the bottom who refuse to spend any kind of money whatsoever? Are they hurting baseball more? We'll get into that coming up in a bit. But before we do all that, let's send it over to our guy. We got Elliot's headlines.
Breaking news, local and national headlines. Whatever's going on in the world of sports, Elliot has you covered. Off the Bench brings you Elliot's headlines.
You got a whistle?
I didn't need my pizza crust.
Headlines. So we do have some headlines here. We'll start with some college basketball from this past weekend. The Bearcats win 67-60 at home against Arizona State. Dylan Mitchell led Bearcats scorers with 14. Dan Skillings, Jizzle James each had 12 apiece, and they will take on Texas Tech tomorrow night to hopefully win 3 conference games in a row. Xavier, they came away with the biggest win of the season, perhaps. Number 7 Marquette on the road, 59-57 the final. They tried to blow it. They tried to lose that one. Fremantle, the leading scorer there with 14 points, adding 10 boards as well. Xavier won that game shooting 2 for 17 from beyond the arc.
Yeah, it was when they had a 19-point lead and they flashed up the 3-point shooting, and I think at that time they were 2 of 14.
Yeah.
I'm like, how the heck are they winning this game? What a week for Xavier. Beat Villanova for the 3rd time since joining the Big East, and then you go to Marquette, get what is probably the hardest win to get in the Big East this year.
Yeah.
Marquette's the best team on the road up there. It was great. It was what a week. We can keep it rolling.
Xavier, low key. I mean, they should have beaten Marquette the first time. Came down to a no call on the trip. Should have beaten UConn in overtime.
Right.
And I don't know. Maybe should have beaten the Bearcats. I don't know. Xavier's team's looking a lot better right now. So I think that certainly put them into the possibility of possibly making the tournament. I think that puts them right there.
What's your Bengals tweet? We've got the chance to have a chance to have a possibility.
That's right. Xavier's now in the realm of having a chance to have a chance. 15th ranked Mississippi State, they survive against 21st ranked Ole Miss, 84-81 in overtime. West Virginia, they shock number 2 Iowa State at home. Vanderbilt upset number 6 Tennessee, 76-75. 17th ranked Purdue, they went to Oregon, upset the 13th ranked Ducks. Duck sound.
Quack.
Thank you. Number one Auburn, they held on against 23rd ranked Georgia.
Want a tiger sound?
Yes.
Rawr.
Thank you. Number 8 Kentucky, they hosted 4th ranked Alabama, lost 102-97. Elephant sound. Thank you. 10th ranked Houston, they won at the buzzer against UCF on the road. Night.
Swing, swing,
TCU upset 25th ranked Baylor on the road with 6 seconds left. 74-71 the final yesterday. 12th ranked Michigan State, they won 78 against 19th ranked Illinois. And finally, in the college basketball world, Dick Vitale will be back on the call this Saturday for Duke Wake Forest after beating cancer for a 4th time. So Dick Vitale returning. I think first time in over a year, maybe. How about that for our guy? I guess I'll do NFL scores. We're going to talk a lot about the NFL today, but I'll read the scores now. Chiefs, they beat the Texans 23-14 to advance to their 7th straight AFC Championship game. Patrick Mahomes now 7-0 in the divisional round. He has won at least one playoff game every single year he's been a starting quarterback of the Kansas City Chiefs.
He's been to the AFC Championship game every year that he's been the starting quarterback.
Correct. Travis Kelce, 117 of Mahomes' 170 yards. Stroud sacked 8 times. Not every quarterback can survive when getting sacked 8 times.
Yeah, it's really hard to win a postseason game when you get sacked, especially against the 1 seed. Like, it's really tough to beat the 1 seed in the playoffs when you get sacked 8 to 9 times. Like,
almost
really
impossible.
Correct.
Virtually impossible. The Commanders, they take down the Lions 45-31, biggest upset of the weekend. Jaden Daniels, 22 of 31, 299 yards, 2 touchdowns, adding 51 yards on the ground. Brian Robinson, 77 yards, 2 scores as well. Jared Goff, 23 of 40, 1 touchdown, 3 interceptions, a fumble. Jamison Williams, he threw an interception. Yikes. That's a bad way to end it. If you're a Lions fan.
So I love doing this because everyone always complains about play calling and everything like that. And everyone was complaining about the Jamison Williams pick, like why are you running a trick play there? I mean, that's just a perfect example. Like it's all fun and games, these trick plays and all these fun plays till they don't work, and then you just stare at the screen like, what the heck am I watching? And you certainly thought that when Jamison Williams threw that pick.
Eagles, they hung on to beat the Rams 28-22. You know, you say Saquon had 150 yards last time. Surely they know they got to stop him. Not quite. 2 70-yard rushes. He had 205 yards on the ground, 2 touchdowns. Unbelievable performance from him. By far, I think it's safe to say he was the best off-season acquisition by any team this year. Absolutely incredible, Saquon Barkley is. The Bills advanced to an AFC Championship game, winning 27-25. Andrews and Lamar both lost fumbles. Lamar threw an interception. Allen, 16 of 22 for only 127 yards. He did have 2 rushing touchdowns, but the Bills' offense didn't do a ton, I would say. The Ravens just gave him the game. And moving on, finally, our last headline here. We kind of mentioned this. The Dodgers, busy weekend. They signed Tanner Scott and Roki Sasaki, bringing their payroll as of right now, not done yet, obviously, to the grand total of $375 million. That is $70 million more than the next highest team. For reference, the Reds have spent $311 million combined over the last 3 years. If you add on to the deferrals, because people forget they're deferring $1 billion to Shohei, it exceeds $500 million this year for that roster. $500 million the Dodgers are paying for their roster this season. The AL Central, that's 5 teams, their combined payroll this year, $500 million. Those are your headlines.
Surely they're done adding, right? Like they're
I
out of
wouldn't
money.
No,
They're
I
broke?
mean, they still got to get Santander, so I don't know.
I was going to say when no one else.
He won't
can,
even. He won't even play. They're just going to get him just because they can.
Well, I can't wait because the Dodgers also have a great farm system. I can't wait, just like they did with Gavin Lux, who was a former top prospect, like they did to the Cubs, Michael Busch. I can't wait for them to be like, we've got like these top 10 prospects, and I mean they just got nowhere to play. Just dump them off, and then you get a little crumbs from the Dodgers. They just toss these crumbs like we're pigeons in the park, and we're just like, yep, we'll pick them up. But that's what's going to happen next. Maybe you'll get like Bobby Miller or somebody. I don't know what's going to happen.
Please dump them off.
Right.
All right, and that was Elliot's headlines. Again, this is Off the Bench presented by United Dairy Farmers. We'll talk the national championship game coming up later on in the show, but I don't know if you guys saw this. It's been talked about for a few years now, like Mercedes-Benz Stadium. They have their fan-first pricing for all of their concessions, and they're doing that tonight for the national championship game, which is wild that they're worried about the pockets of the fans after the cheapest ticket right now is like $1,900 or something crazy like that. When I went to the Rose Bowl, every time you go up to get a drink or anything, it's like $20. It was like if I get 2 drinks, it's $40. It's absolutely insane. If you get any drinks or anything here, like a soda's $2 at Mercedes-Benz Stadium, pretzels
Really?
$2, popcorn's $2. You get a hot dog and French fries for $3. A beer is $5. Like that's
baby.
yeah. And then cheeseburgers are $5. But like that is some awesome pricing. I would love to see that more universally across all professional sports. It won't happen that way, but I did think that was pretty cool that they kept that fan first pricing for the national championship game tonight.
Mercedes-Benz Stadium, I remember when it was being built. Obviously, it's in Atlanta, Georgia, home of the Falcons. I remember when it was being built, they got a big what to do about they were putting the biggest fast food from Atlanta, Chick-fil-A, in the stadium. And then they said, like, oh, yeah, Chick-fil-A's in the stadium. It won't be open on Sundays. That's a problem when the Falcons play on Sundays. So, yeah, they just didn't have Chick-fil-A open for most of the home games for the Falcons. But I'm glad Chick-fil-A gets to be open today for the national championship.
It's quite the promotion for Thursday night and Monday night football games,
Right,
I'm sure.
right.
It's a treat whenever.
Listen, right before the game, you say a prayer, you eat some Chick-fil-A, and then you watch the Notre Dame Fighting Irish take on the Ohio State Buckeyes.
Columbus Polytech.
There you have it. Listen, I can't defend Ohio State on anything. Like they need to win this national championship tonight just because like they've been a punching bag for a few years. Like there's been, Buckeye fans are the most obnoxious fan base out there. I will never deny that. But there's been nothing to brag about for Ohio State. So if they win this national championship tonight, that'll soothe some things over. But that shirt, I'm not even mad at that shirt because Ohio State fans would be wearing the same thing if it was, in reverse. So we'll see. But I just respect the fact that you're not a Michigan fan, but you hate Ohio State that much that you bought the shirt. I appreciate that. I do.
People often ask me who my favorite college football team is, and I say I got 12 of them, sometimes more. It's just whoever Columbus Wesleyan, Central Ohio Tech, whoever they're playing that day is who I'm rooting for. And today it just so happens to be Notre Dame, who I also kind of like. So go
There
Irish.
we go.
Go Irish. Look at this. It's all come together.
People always wonder who your college football team is and your politics too, but we all know that. You talk about it all the time. It's obvious, right?
No one
Nobody.
knows. No one knows my politics.
Where's Jacob today? Where's he? Just an off day. It's just a vacation day.
Yeah, I would say
he's
it's an
out
off
doing
day.
his
That's a
thing.
good way to describe it. I think
He's living his best life.
Yeah, he's
He went to our nation's capital to celebrate the greatest American in our country's history, Martin Luther King. Went to the Washington Mall, and he's gonna go where I had a dream speech. He's just gonna spend the whole day in the freezing cold celebrating Martin Luther King. So shout out to Jacob.
Yeah, this cold is for the birds, by the way. I'm over the cold. I tell you that much. But all right, let's step away for a few moments. I want to dive back into more the playoff action from over the weekend. Obviously, with Lamar and the Ravens losing yesterday. Look, we knew this played out exactly how we figured it was going to be. No matter whether it was Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson losing this game, it was going to be the main talking point about the legacy of the losing quarterback more so than the accomplishment of the quarterback that won last night. But we'll talk about that. Jaden Daniels, hell of a story there. Again, a rookie quarterback leading his team to the NFC Championship game. Can he pull off the upset? Can he lead a team to a Super Bowl? We'll get to all of that when we come back. More Off the Bench next. All right, and we are back. This is Off the Bench presented by United Dairy Farmers. Off and rolling here on a Monday. Hope everybody had a great weekend. NFL playoffs over the weekend. Let's dive into a couple of the storylines right off the bat. The biggest letdown and the biggest achievement from over the weekend is what we'll focus on. Let's start with, obviously, the biggest letdown. Obviously, when you take a look at the fact that, the Lions are a 1 seed, and there's a lot of expectations for them. They've been a great story the last couple of seasons, but the 1 seed out of the NFC, they get knocked out of the playoffs. They get upset by Washington. Obviously, a disappointment there. But then you also look at Lamar Jackson and the Ravens. This is the most talented roster that Lamar Jackson's had around him throughout his time in Baltimore, of course. And they get upset, not really upset, but they get beat yesterday or last night, if you will. A couple turnovers early, the big drop pass by Mark Andrews late. Which one was the biggest letdown? Who let down their fan bases more? The Lions, the Ravens? Who was the biggest letdown coming out of the divisional round of the playoffs?
I think it's the Lions, but I will say the Ravens losing the way they did certainly doesn't help. They legitimately – the Bills didn't play good. The Bills' offense was –
They did not.
The Bills' offense was fine, I guess. I mean, Josh Allen, 127 yards, 20 rushing yards. I think James Cook, leading rusher, with 50. They didn't play well. The longest play of the game was a 34-yard catch to Shakir, which is fine, but it's not how the Bills play football. They just kept it within themselves, and they were able to win that game based on the fact that the Ravens just gifted it to them, wrapped it up in a Christmas present, gave it to them. Thank you very much. The Lions, I will say, played a similar version, turned it over 5 times against the Commanders' defense, who hasn't been good all season long, and it's as good as the Lions could possibly be in an NFL season this year, and to lose by 2 scores and really, honestly, not even be close at the end is probably a most brutal feeling that they'll feel in a long time. Dan Campbell, credit to him, after the game, he's like, it's my fault. Stood up for the team, stood up for his guys, but it's as bad as a loss as you could probably get against a team that probably had no business being in that game. They just have a generational quarterback that's able to overcome just about anything over there.
I think it's really not even close. The Detroit Lions clearly is the bigger Shout out to the NFC North. We heard all season long how great the NFC North is. This is the best division in football. They played 3 playoff games. Every single playoff game they lost by double-digit points. So maybe let's pump the brakes on the NFC North. But yeah, I mean, this franchise, this city has been so down in the dumps pretty much for their entire run as a franchise, and they finally build something truly awesome. They're scoring 1 billion points a game, and everyone's all in. Everyone's just they can taste it, right? They can taste going to the Super Bowl. They get really excited. It was reminiscent of when the Bengals went to the Super Bowl, how energized this city got by one team, and then you show up and you play your first playoff game, haven't played a few weeks, and you just run into Jaden Daniels, who I'll say this right now. I didn't do this with C.J. Stroud. I didn't do this with – I've never done this before with rookie – I have no problem putting him in that top tier of quarterback. No problem whatsoever putting him up there with Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, and Patrick Mahomes, because I truly think that he is that good. But the Lions, I mean, everyone is making excuses, and they are a little justified, all the injuries and everything like that. I get it. But this is the NFL. A lot of teams go into the postseason banged up. The Bengals won a playoff game up in Buffalo a couple years ago with 2 starting linemen. Yeah. All the time. We don't really ever make excuses for anybody in the postseason. I'm not going to start making excuses for the Lions because their whole secondary, their whole defense is banged up when they just played very well throughout the year. They're still the number 1 seed, and the defense has been banged up the entire season. It really stinks if you're a Lions fan here today. As for the Ravens, I don't know how big of a letdown it is. I mean, it is. It is, because you felt like you were playing the best football in the National Football League over the last 10 weeks or so, pretty much ever since their defense turned around. But you kind of just are used to it at this point, right? I mean, 5 trips to the postseason for Lamar Jackson. He's got 3 wins. And he played fine, right? I don't know why we're not allowed talking about Lamar Jackson struggling in the postseason for some reason. Like, we can do it about anybody else whatsoever. But when we do it about Lamar Jackson, people's panties get in a bunch. But Yeah, I don't know. It's he's 3-5 in the postseason with 3 MVPs. He's going to be like the first quarterback ever to have more MVPs than playoff wins. Like he's going to be the first athlete ever to have more MVPs than playoff wins. It's truly incredible that it continues to happen. And they did gift him that game. I don't know how the Lions score or the Bills scored 27 points.
And you mentioned the Lions though. Like the Lions, the defense. I mean, I'm not going to say they were good, but the offense is the reason they lost that game. Like that's the worst part of it all. I know they lost every defensive player known to man.
Right.
You turned it over 5 times. You're having
Correct.
having your running back and wide receiver throw passes. It's not going to be fruitful. It's just not. When those trick plays don't work, boy, it's brutal to watch. It is brutal to watch. I have no knock against Ben Johnson, but when Jamison Williams threw that pass, I mean, you had to know it was over. It's over. You can't do it. You can't possibly realistically throw that interception as an NFL football player. The Ravens, I'm not going to say they're used to it, but I will say the narrative that this guy can't win playoff games is actually, I mean, it's a very real thing. I mean, they should have won that game. They played better than the Buffalo Bills yesterday. They lost because of 3 disgusting turnovers. 4? How many turnovers? 3 turnovers?
Mark Andrews, the Lamar pick, I think it's 3.
It's 3. I counted the Mark Andrews drop as a turnover too for the 2-point conversion because that was horrible, absolutely horrible. Lamar Jackson's a very good quarterback.
He's great.
Very good quarterback.
He's phenomenal.
But you have to win playoff games. Like that's, and we'll get to the Chiefs in a second. But that's where, like, Patrick Mahomes, he doesn't lose. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say he's had a great year. He's not a Pro Bowler for the first time. He had 170 yards in that game. But he doesn't lose. So you can't really knock the fact that this guy has never lost. I mean, he's 7-0 in divisional games. 7-0 in the divisional round. That's insanity.
It's going to get to a point where, with Lamar, he'll get over the hump eventually. He truly is too fantastic of a quarterback to never do it. I mean, like, we forget that Peyton Manning didn't win a playoff game till like year 8 in the league or whatever it was, or he didn't win 2 playoff games till like year 8 in the league. So, like, at some point, he gets over that hump. But while we're sitting here, we've got to acknowledge, like, yeah, he played well yesterday, but he didn't get it done. Like, your offense holds Josh Allen to 120 yards of passing and or your defense holds Josh Allen to 120 yards passing and 20 yards rushing. You should win that game, and they didn't. They just didn't.
Oh, sound Kinner.
There we go.
Nope, sound Kinner. Sound Kinner.
Baby.
Here we go.
Oh, man. All right, now we're going to try and pretend what he's saying. You just move your lips, and we'll talk for it.
I think he's saying
that Notre Dame's going to win tonight?
I think that's exactly what he's saying. And I think he's saying Joe Burrow's a really, really good quarterback, and I think you certainly have to rank him above Lamar Jackson, despite how many MVPs this guy's going to win.
Okay, so let me ask you this question while we're waiting for Kenner to come back, because like I already did the Jaden Daniels thing. I didn't do. Everyone wanted to do this with C.J. Stroud last year. They wanted to put him up here. This is the best rookie season ever. Jaden Daniels quickly surpassed that. Do you have any problem whatsoever putting Jaden Daniels in that top tier with Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, and Patrick Mahomes?
No, because I don't think we've seen this from a rookie quarterback ever. I don't think we've seen. Have we ever seen a rookie quarterback advance to the NFC Championship game? I don't know.
Certainly.
Have we?
I don't know. I just know that
a rookie quarterback's playing as well as he did this year. And to be fair, like he was. I know they've got Terry McLaurin. I know Brian Robinson's been a solid running back.
That roster's not great.
It's not a good roster,
No.
and he is carrying them. That defense sucks. And I think that you have to give him his flowers. He's absolutely spectacular. If there was a redraft, right? All the players, every player on every team in the middle, we just have to pick. Jaden Daniels is absolutely going top 5. Absolutely. You want to be a part of history, and that guy is going to be history. Absolutely spectacular, Jaden Daniels. The season that he's having, Washington won that playoff game, and I can't imagine how good they feel.
Check 2, nothing. It's still just very quiet.
But the thought of having your starting quarterback, which they haven't had in so long, that's the real win here. I know they beat the Lions 45-31 or whatever it was, advanced to the championship game. They winning that game with Jaden Daniels, knowing that he is your guy for the next 10, 15 years, that is the real win.
Yeah, did you see, so with the commies making it to the NFC Championship, did you see since 2010, there's 16 teams in the NFC, the National Football Conference, 15 of them have played in the NFC Championship. You know which team has it?
Who?
The Cowboys.
Oh,
One of
no.
16. Yep.
Oh, no.
Yep. Kenner, you're back.
And
No, I'm just joking. It should be working. It should be
Nice.
working.
That
Yeah.
got me. That got me.
That got me. That got me.
No, I know you guys jumped on Jaden Daniels. I want to last thing real quick on Lamar because you brought it up a little bit ago about I don't know why we can't criticize Lamar.
We
like
can't.
Dan
We're not
Orlovsky.
allowed.
If you say anything bad about Lamar Jackson, then you're a loser. Well, I've been called worse, so I'll be a loser here for right now. Bottom line is, this isn't a Lamar thing. This is just a quarterback thing. Like at the end of the day, like quarterbacks are held to a much higher standard than they are held to a significantly higher standard than any other player out there because they're paid significantly more than anybody out there, and they're paid to carry that burden when it's all said and done. Look, Lamar, let's be clear because people are like, well, it's about how you close out the game. And I'm like, well, all the turnovers in the first quarter were just as costly than if he would have had that fumble and the interception late in that fourth quarter. It all counted the same. It all, it stopped a scoring drive. It, killed momentum. The Bills didn't capitalize and score on the first turnover or whatever. The Bills obviously come out victorious. But the fact that the same media that you can't criticize Lamar Jackson is looking at Mark Andrews and saying, oh, man, he shouldn't even get on the team bus. Oh, man, how does he even look at Lamar in the eye and all this stuff? And I'm like, what are we doing? Like, if you're going to protect one, protect both. But at the end of the day, this is football. It's always worked that way. You always criticize the quarterback, whether it's fair or not. Mm-hmm. And I don't think anyone said Lamar played poorly. But when you are paid as like Lamar Jackson is, you're expected to be almost perfect out there. Also, you talked about the fact that he doesn't turn it over during the regular season. The last time, by the way, this is the narrative that works against Lamar. The last time he had 2 turnovers in a game happened to be the AFC Championship game of last year. Like, he saves his biggest turnover games for the biggest stages. That's the problem, and it was on display yesterday.
I think he's got 8 games in his career where he's turned the ball over twice, something like that. I think I saw the stat. And half of them are in the postseason. So, like this, we're not pulling this narrative out of thin air. We're not. It's not coming out of nowhere. Like and he did. Tom said this on the show. When it came down to nut cutting time, as we say on this show, Lamar went right down the field and scored and should have had a 2-point conversion. So he gets a little bit of credit for that. Every sport, every athlete ever, when a guy who was tremendous in the regular season, tremendous enough to win, probably going to get his 3rd MVP. When he can't get it done in the postseason, we kill him for not getting it done in the postseason. But for some reason with Lamar Jackson, we're not allowed talking about it. Like, it's just like, we're just like, hey, he's great in the regular season. What are you talking about? There's no problem. It's like, he played well yesterday. He played okay yesterday. Like, the good came with the bad, but I just don't know why we're not allowed talking about it because it's a thing. It's a thing. 3-5 in the postseason.
And by the way, Josh Allen, obviously he didn't have a big number game yesterday, but like when you looked at the playoff numbers for Josh Allen, first playoff numbers for Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen had like a QB rating of about 100. He averages like 275 plus yards a game. He averages 2 touchdowns a game.
Yep.
He doesn't turn the ball over. But keep in mind, the previous narrative of Josh Allen was how he turned the ball over too much.
Right.
And everyone criticized him for that. Well, Lamar turned the ball over twice yesterday, obviously early in the game. Doesn't matter. By the way, he doesn't turn that over. They probably put points up on the board. You lost by 2. Of course, it's going to be magnified. Bottom line is he a bum quarterback? Is he not a Hall of Fame quarterback? Is he never going to win a Super Bowl? We can't say any of those things. The Ravens will be right back in this position next year with expectations to win. He has to get it done eventually. Peyton Manning, all those same narratives. It happens over and over and over. Right. At the end of the day, though, he has to get it done because he had weapons. Derrick Henry was brought over to be able to kind of neutralize some of the deficiencies with the weapons in the past game. There's really no excuse. He had 6 All-Pro players around him. Are we saying he's a horrible quarterback? No, but the criticism is fair. I don't know why we're not allowed to say it. So it is what it is. All right, off the bench presented by United Dairy Farmers. We talked about who was the biggest who's the biggest disappointment over the weekend, but who had the bigger achievement? Obviously, you'll get Jaden Daniels and the Washington Commanders, kind of surprising everybody getting to the NFC Championship game, and a rookie quarterback is a win away from Super Bowl in Jaden Daniels. But then you look at Josh Allen, who this season was supposed to be kind of a retooling year, a rebuilding type season. Rebuilding maybe not so much, but a retooling year. And he has his team a game away from getting to the Super Bowl, and obviously a rematch with the Chiefs. They won earlier in the regular season. Who had the bigger achievement coming out of the weekend in the division run of the playoffs? Was it Josh Allen leading the Bills to the AFC Championship game, or is it Jaden Daniels leading his Commanders to the NFC Championship game?
Yeah, I'm going to say it's Jaden Daniels because, again, I think that roster coming into the year wasn't supposed to be good. They were supposed to just be bad. It wasn't a rebuilding year. They were just supposed to be bad. And Jaden Daniels is one of the best quarterbacks I've seen, one of the best rookie quarterbacks I've seen play football. It's spectacular what he's been able to do this year. He's carrying them all the way to the postseason, all the way to the NFC championship game, and I'm hoping that he carries them all the way to the Super Bowl. It's going to be a tough test. I mean, the Eagles are certainly the best all-around roster left in the playoffs.
Oh, yeah.
So it's going to be a tough test, but Josh Allen, he has those standards. That's what he's expected to do. He hasn't done it a whole lot, but that's what his expectation is. Jaden Daniels, we knew nothing about him, or at least what he would be in the NFL, and now we know, and what we know is that he is more than capable of taking his team to a championship game.
Everyone that preseason said Jaden Daniels is better than Caleb Williams, go take your victory lap because you earned it. He earned it. He clearly was the bigger achiever going against this Lions team that looked like world beaters all year long. Most people had them number one in the power rankings all season long because they weren't only winning games, they were blowing teams out by 40. And to go in as a rookie playing against a Detroit rabid fan base that hadn't seen a team like this in the history of their franchise, and to pretty much quiet them up, go for 300 yards in the air, 2 touchdowns. You had big run after big run. Yeah, Jaden Daniels clearly is the bigger achiever here because he's earned it, right? He's earned it. That's not a good roster. That's a team that is lifted up by Jaden Daniels, and it's hard not to fall in love with Jaden Daniels watching him play because similar to Lamar, similar to Josh, similar to Joe, there's something about when you watch him, you see it immediately. This guy has it. Whatever it is, he has it. And it's truly incredible.
I will say this. The Caleb Williams stuff, if the Bears drafted this guy, if the Bears drafted Mahomes, all those arguments are bad because I'm going to tell you right now, and I'm going to hope I don't get yelled at for saying this, the Bears don't develop quarterbacks. Quarterbacks aren't good in Chicago. It's been that way for a long time. I'm confident I won't get yelled at for this take, but it's a true statement. Right. If Jaden goes to the Bears, he's probably not good, or at least not as good. If Patrick Mahomes goes to the Bears, probably not a 7-time AFC championship contender. It's just that scenario. So it's truly about where you get drafted to. And, if you're a quarterback getting drafted to Chicago, good luck. No one else has been able to make it work. I have a hard time believing Caleb's going to be able to make it work, and that's no fault to Caleb Williams. That's just the Chicago Bears. So good on Jaden Daniels that he was able to get drafted to the Commanders. I'm not saying the Commanders are some absolute breathtaking organization, but I will say since the change of ownership, anything's possible now. It's a completely different ballgame.
Yeah, and hopefully the mic's still working, right? Because last time this was about the point where the mic cut out. Look, I want to say Josh Allen because I think the season he has had has just been fantastic. And I thought that yesterday, was he lights out? No, but he didn't. I don't think he played poorly. He just didn't play like his numbers. He threw the ball 22 times. They were obviously leaning into the run game. He obviously punched the ball into the end zone twice. Great game, great storyline, but they were at home, obviously, and, who knows if what happens if Mark Andrews catches that. We don't know what would have ultimately happened, in overtime or even in the final 90 seconds of that one. So great story for the Bills, but I don't know how anyone could not pick Jaden Daniels and the Commanders at this point for all the reasons you guys have basically already said. It's, I've heard people say it's the best rookie season we've seen from a quarterback. Obviously, we saw a great thing from C.J. Stroud last year. C.J. Stroud obviously got a playoff win in his, first year in the playoffs as well. But now 2 playoff wins for Jaden Daniels, and he's a game away from getting to the Super Bowl as a rookie. And let's be clear, they split with the Eagles. Obviously, the Eagles will be favored. I haven't taken a look at the line. I don't know if you guys have. The Eagles will be favored to 5.5. That's not that crazy of a line. I thought that would be a bigger line than what it is. Mm-hmm. The Commanders, they've been rolling heading into the postseason. They have a postseason. Jaden Daniels, some of the throws he has made. We saw a lot of those throws against the Bengals earlier in the season, and then we didn't see a lot of those throws for for a good chunk of time, and then he started getting hot towards the tail end of the regular season. I think this storyline is just amazing, and it's kind of an NFC East championship right now to get to the Super Bowl. But I'm pulling for Jaden Daniels and the Commanders. I think they're a hell of a story. Daniels is fun to watch. I think they'd be fun to watch in the Super Bowl, but I think we're getting Chiefs Eagles when it's all said and done.
I don't think we're going to get cheated, but I think the Eagles do roll here, and we have time to talk about that later in the week. I will say this. You brought up back to week 3 when the Bengals played the Commanders on, I don't know if it was Monday Night Football or Sunday Night Football, but in primetime game, the Bengals were 9-point favorites in that game. Just crazy to think about. They were 9-point favorites in that game against the Commanders, and that's when the sky was falling, and rightfully so. That put us to 0-3, but it's just funny to think about how much narratives change over the course of an NFL season when really things all stay the same. The better quarterbacks win in the postseason, yada, yada, yada. Like, week to week it's different, but throughout the year you pretty much see the same storylines continue.
All right, Off the Bench presented by United Dairy Farmers, Chatterbox Sports on YouTube, ESPN 1410 Wing AM in Dayton. Before we move on to the Chiefs thing, we'll step away for a few when we come back. I do have a question. I want you guys' take on Jared Goff, because we've talked about the scariest quarterbacks in the NFL, I think, are having a Jared Goff, having a Sam Darnold. For you guys, it was Andy Dalton. Quarterbacks just good enough to win you games, but obviously have a ceiling that's been met. Scariest quarterbacks to have. We'll discuss the Lions when we come back more in detail. Don't go anywhere. More Off the Bench next. The Detroit Lions have been a great story all season. The Minnesota Vikings, they were a great story all season. I mean, the Vikings, I wasn't very high on Sam Darnold coming into the season. Obviously, I was wrong. The guy was just lights out until the lights were the brightest, and then obviously it's a different story. But like Sam Darnold and Jared Goff and like the Jameis Winstons and a lot of these, and Jameis, I don't even think I could put in the category of what we saw from Sam Darnold. I want to be respectful to Sam Darnold and Jared Goff. But like, I think there are a good chunk of quarterbacks in the NFL. I think Baker Mayfield's one, Jared Goff, Sam Darnold. There are a good chunk of quarterbacks that are very, very, very good NFL quarterbacks, but there's a ceiling that comes with those quarterbacks. And I think those are the worst quarterbacks to have, because I would much rather have and then this sounds crazy, so give me time. I'd much rather have a DTR than a Baker Mayfield. I'd much rather have a DTR than a Sam Darnold or a Jared Goff. And the reason is, when I see DTR, I know he stinks, and I know they have to move on to the next option. What I don't like is, and this is what my biggest argument with everyone who's been criticized, you can criticize the Browns for a lot, obviously. We don't need to get into that even more, all right? But the Baker Mayfield thing, if we rewind back to when the Browns had him, everyone was making fun of the Browns, saying you're going to be absolutely ridiculous if you give him that $35 to $40 million, because, hey, he's good enough to win you games. He's not good enough to take you where you want to go. When we see it with Jared Goff, we saw it with Sam Darnold. Those are the scariest quarterbacks to have. I remember saying that during Andy Dalton's run in Cincinnati. Mm-hmm. That's a quarterback you can't just move on from. You don't just let him go. It's hard to find the Andy Daltons of the world, but sometimes those keep you running in place as opposed to continuing to strive to go get that elite level quarterback, which is hard to find as well. The Lions, do they get back here? I mean, what do the Lions do? They have to continue trusting that Jared Goff is actually the guy. I mean, what do the Lions do? The Vikings do? They come to the best seasons that anyone has had this year, but I think they're scratching their heads saying, what do we do? Because it might be a quarterback problem. Great, we have guys that can win us games weeks 1 through 17, but man, the playoffs, that's where it all matters. Sam Darnold, Jared Goff, those quarterbacks, Baker Mayfield, they're not guys you can rely on to take you to the promised land.
Yeah, the Lions, but I will say this. A game manager type quarterback like Jared Goff, who, by the way, I mean, he's gotten to the Super Bowl before. Right. He's had a lot of success in the postseason. I think he's still your guy. He has to be your guy, because though Kinner is right, these guys do have ceilings that fall short of a Super Bowl usually. There are a lot worse options out there. And those question marks you're talking about, I think that's scarier to play with, because you have a Lions roster that, when healthy, is absolutely solid. The offense is incredible. The defense, again, when they have guys there, is a solid defense. So I would have Jared Goff, and I'd take my chances that you're able to run the ball, which is how they won as many games as they did this year. You have 2 elite running backs, maybe 2 top 10 running backs, in tandem, and you use that method.
Listen, I'm going to answer this in a couple of ways. The first one is, if you're the Lions, you don't do anything. Jared Goff is a really good quarterback. He's a pretty good quarterback, right? Like, he's a top 10 quarterback. No, I don't think anybody in the world is debating that. but you're also right that he's not in that. I think Dan Orlovsky does the quarterback tiers like this.
Yeah.
He does it quarterbacks you win because of, or quarterbacks you win with, quarterbacks you lose with, and quarterbacks you lose because of. To where there's probably 4 or 5 guys that are quarterbacks you win because of: Joe Burrows, Josh Allen's, Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, Jaden Daniels. Jared Goff's in that second tier. You can win 10, 11 games, and you can be the number 1 seed for the Lions this year with Jared Goff. You can win the NFC in back-to-back years with Baker Mayfield. You can Dak Prescott and the Cowboys won 12 games a year for like 4 straight years. Like, you can win a lot of games in the regular season. But here's the thing. In the National Football League, about a decade ago, they made major rule changes. They made major rule changes to protect the offense. They wanted more offensive scoring. They wanted to protect their quarterbacks because they realized that the quarterbacks are the stars of the league. And because of that, to win in the postseason, you've got to have an elite quarterback. You can get to the Super Bowl, right? Brock Purdy and Jalen Hurts are the last 2 NFC champions. They are quarterbacks you win with. They're not quarterbacks you win because of. You can get to the final game, but when push comes to shove and you got to play an elite guy that has a similar roster build to you, you're going to get beat out. When you got to play Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Lamar, you're going to get beat out eventually. That being said, not everyone can have those elite teams. So, like, you're just kind of stuck in this limbo of, hey, we're going to be really good. Maybe, we'll strike gold. Right? In the last 15 years, I think 2 non-elite quarterbacks have won a Super Bowl. It was Joe Flacco and Nick Foles. So maybe you'll strike gold every once in a while. But other than then, you just cross your fingers and keep selling yourself that your quarterback's good enough until you see them do what Jared Goff did, and he wasn't good enough. He just wasn't good enough.
Yeah, you brought up the Niners getting to the Super Bowl, but they're scared to death. They're in the same situation. Like, they're in a situation where it's like Brock Purdy. It's like the Bengals with Andy Dalton years ago. It's like, you don't just let Brock Purdy go. You can't just let him go. But you can't pay him 50, 55. Mm-hmm. But you might have to, right? Like, and I know the Bengals, they didn't pay Andy Dalton top of market money. I get that. But there was still a huge pocket of Bengals fans that were like, man, he's not worth that money. And I'm like, but it's tough to find. Like, the Andy Daltons, I know people want to bury him. You can't find those guys. Those guys are hard to find. You can't find those level quarterbacks. They're not just floating around the NFL. And when you get them, you can't just let them go. So, but those quarterbacks are scary, though, because it's like, the Ravens, they're pissed off that their season ended yesterday, but they know they're going to be back. The Bengals in a 2-year drought, but it's like, you guys, you're pissed, but it's like, all right, we can't wait for next year because we're going to have a shot. I don't think a lot of teams with these mid-tier quarterbacks always feel that way. Like the Lions, like there's a pocket of those fans that feel good about their chances to get back, but are also like, can Jared Goff take us there? That's going to be the big question mark. And to be fair, Goff maybe isn't the best example. I think Purdy is the better example of these. Goff's season, too, when he's done it with multiple teams and he's played deep into the postseason. But either way,
he's a first overall pick, and that's worth something, too. Like, they thought he was talented enough to be a first overall pick. It's when you're in that position as a fan, it sits in the back of your brain. Because I remember doing this with Andy Dalton. It sits in the back of your brain, my quarterback's not good enough to win it all, or my quarterback's not good enough to take me where I want to go. But then you see like 2-3 games where he plays really well, and you almost shove it further down in your consciousness. You're like, I think he is good enough. I think he can do that, and that's what the Lions did this year. You knew going into the year, or you knew like, Jared Goff's not that top, that creme de la creme, but man, he looks really good right now. And then you get in the divisional round and he throws 3 picks and looks completely inept, and you're like, oh yeah, that's the Jared Goff that I knew we had all along. And they'll go back next year, and he'll look really good for a lot of the year. And they'll convince themselves once again that Jared Goff turned a leaf, and he is one of those elite quarterbacks, and he's really good. He's a top 10 quarterback, no doubt about it. Then they'll have a game in the postseason where he'll do this, and you go, oh, yeah, that's right. He's Jared Goff. He's not Patrick Mahomes. He's not Josh Allen.
Yeah, like Baker this year, he put up 4,500 yards, 40 touchdowns, and he's the 10th quarterback to do that. If you look at the names of the quarterbacks that have done what he did, it's the Aaron Rodgers, it's the Tom Brady's, it's the Patrick Mahomes. Joe Burrow did it this year. It's every single one of the names are elite level quarterbacks. Baker's the worst of all the players that have accomplished that. But those players are scary because they're going to put up numbers. They're going to make they're going to make you feel like you have something. But then every year we get to this January, heading into February portion, and then they remind you either way. But I would like to go back to even having Baker. I would like to have even that level of a quarterback. Just I can go back. I would like
you're
to.
You're a couple first-round picks away from getting another Baker. It takes about 12 before you get back to a Baker. You got to go through the Brandon Weedens to get your Baker Mayfield, and then you'll get rid of Baker Mayfield for someone not good.
Oh, the Weeden year.
I'm not going to say anything.
To be fair, I went back and looked at the tape. You realize I was yelling at Jacob way more. Like, Jacob caught the
Yeah, but I caught the personal stray. You yelled at my smirk. I haven't heard it. People have been talking about the smirk for weeks. Smirk. I smirk every time I talk. Every time I talk, I'm smirking right now. But I'm not going to say anything. The Browns are a well-run organization, and all of the 45 quarterbacks they've had in the last 25 years have been very good.
I've been trying to tell you.
I know. I'm now listening.
Thank you. That's all I've been asking. Oh my God, more off the bench. Oh, want to bitch about the Chiefs? Want to complain about?
Please.
Patrick
I've been looking for an outlet to complain about the Kansas City Chiefs for a couple days now.
Fair enough. All right, Elliot, his smirk, and more off the bench when we come back. The Kansas City Chiefs are easily, the most hated team in sports right now, it seems. It just seems no matter what they do, it's not because they're talented. It's not because they're good. It's because the officials, right? That narrative has existed with pretty much every dynasty in professional sports. I remember, when the Heatles with the Miami Heat, it's, LeBron and Chris Bosh and Dwayne Wade, they're not good. It's that the NBA wants them to be good. And that comes with everything. That comes with it. That adds to the mystique and the aura of the hatred of these teams. But I tell you what, I look forward. I pay more attention to every single play and penalty for the Kansas City Chiefs games just to see if there's something there. And I've rolled my eyes at it for so long, and I'm like, where there's smoke, there has to be fire, right? Is it as bad as everybody says? I don't know what to make of this. I don't really lose sleep at night or get angry either way and think that the Chiefs are truly getting help from the officials. But again, when you have the broadcasters bringing it up, when you have the Texans and every player bringing it up in the postgame, is there something there? I'm going to feed it to you guys. Do you guys buy into the narrative that the league and the officials are pushing this Chiefs dynasty along? Do you believe that to be the case?
Yeah, no, the National Football League is so smart because they are going to push not one of the major markets. They're not going to have the New York Jets or the New York Giants or the Chicago Bears or one of their major teams, one of their major market teams. They're not going to push them to greatness. They're going to push plucky old Kansas City and going to let them win every single. It's ridiculous. It really. I get it. I do get it because there were some bad calls in that game on Saturday. But you alluded to it at the beginning of the segment when you said it's happened with every dynasty ever. Because it has. When Tom Brady and the Patriots were winning all their Super Bowls and made it the AFC Championship, we were sitting there going, look at them. They get every call. We did it with LeBron in Miami. We did it with LeBron in Cleveland. We did it with Kobe and the Lakers. We did it with Michael Jordan and the Bulls. We do it with every single dynasty to where the only similarity between those teams are that they all win. So maybe it's not that it's some conspiracy that the NFL and the officials are trying to get Patrick Mahomes and the lauded Kansas City Chiefs to win every Super Bowl. Maybe it's just the fact that when you become great, which Patrick Mahomes is, which Andy Reid is, which Travis Kelce is, you get the benefit of the doubt on the calls. We hear people talk about this in baseball, like great pitchers get more work on the plate. Greg Maddux was getting 3 inches off the plate. We see this with Michael Jordan and LeBron James, as you mentioned. So now we're seeing it with the Kansas City Chiefs where you're a little more generous on the calls for whatever reason. I don't know why it is, but it is. It just comes with the territory of winning a whole lot. And I don't know. I think it's ridiculous to think that the NFL has some conspiracy in there. And I'm tired of complaining about greatness, because that's what the Chiefs are, and that's what Patrick Mahomes is. They're great. It's true greatness. Like, I think he might be the greatest quarterback of all time.
I can't say that Patrick Mahomes isn't a good quarterback. That's not what this is about. It has nothing to do with the level of quarterback that Patrick Mahomes is. But the fact of the matter is, you can't watch that Chiefs-Texans game and walk away from it saying this is a fair fight. That the Chiefs won that game because they were the better team. They are the better team. They were the beneficiaries of two of the worst calls I've ever seen. The unnecessary roughness where two Texans made contact with each other for 15 yards on a third. I think was that third down too. It's just outrageous. The NFL has to do something about it. I also think that the Patrick Mahomes thing, and by the way, this isn't even me really yelling at Patrick Mahomes because he knows what's going on here. He knows he can flop out of bounds.
Right.
He knows he can do all this stuff. The stuff where he runs full speed, stops and slows down so he can get contact on him for 15 yards. It's the dumbest thing in the NFL right now. It needs to be stopped. The NFL has to look at it. The issue is they do look at it. They came out and said that they're going to stand by it. They stand by both calls, the unnecessary roughness and the roughing the passer. Those were the right calls, says the NFL. They did a good job. It's a joke. Officiating should not be as big of a part as it is. 8 penalties for 82 yards the Texans had. The Chiefs 4 for 20. It's just that game wasn't fair. The game was not fair. I'm not saying the NFL is out, picking and choosing who wins football games, but it's very clearly that there is a well-known rule amongst officials. I don't know if it's a rule or a unspoken word that we are going to call the game differently when Patrick Mahomes is on the field. I 100%, I 1,000,000% believe it. The Chiefs are beneficiaries. They're very good. And here's the thing about the Chiefs. If you give him one of those penalties, they always capitalize on it. Always. Every single time. I'm trying
That's greatness.
Is it? I mean, it certainly is good. I mean,
Right.
You can't say anything bad about them. They don't lose games.
Right.
But they absolutely get help from officiating more than any other team in the NFL. 1,000,000%.
I think, like I just alluded to earlier when I talked about how the NFL has created these rules, right? 10, 15 years ago, whenever they started crafting these rules to be more offensive friendly, when they crafted these rules to protect their quarterbacks because they realized that these quarterbacks are what drives the league. I don't have a problem with Patrick Mahomes playing into those rules. I don't have a problem with it.
But
it's the NFL's job to change the rules.
The other quarterbacks don't get the calls.
If they did if they did what Patrick Mahomes does, which is tiptoe on the line, which is shady, there's no doubt about it, but it gets the call, so I don't have a problem with him doing it. Like in the same way that if you can, this is another thing that all great teams do. They bend the rules to win games. They get there, and it's what we've seen for decades amongst all sports. All sports.
Jared Goff took a hit on Saturday night. It was one of the hardest hits I've seen a quarterback take. I think he had to leave the game because of it. It wasn't a penalty, and it shouldn't have been a penalty. If Patrick Mahomes takes that hit, it's 30 yards and an ejection. And that's a fact. And that's just a fact. And that's where I have an issue with all of this. If we were consistent with everything, if we're going to say, yeah, we are going to call hip drop tackles. Yeah, we are going to say when there's a blatant face mask on the quarterback, we're going to call it. Then I'd be all for what you're saying right now. But the fact of the matter is, we got part-time employees running around out there making calls in favor of Patrick Mahomes like it's their job. It's not their job. And the fact that the NFL is still not paying officials is a joke. Get somebody as a full-time official. This is the biggest sport in America, and we still have lawyers out there pretending like they know ball. They don't. They don't know ball. Again, NFL officiating this year, and we say it every year, it's a joke. Reed, you have the ability, the eye in the sky or whatever the hell they're calling that, they have the ability to fix every little mistake, and it doesn't take time. The one time that they had the NFL rules allowed for officials to look at tape, to go look at a penalty, i.e. the pass interference, they immediately took it out of the game. That's because the pass interference rule is borderline subjective. That's
what these rules are too.
No, if you go back and look at the blatant missed face masks on not just Joe Burrow, but on a lot of quarterbacks this season, That's something that you can easily see in a replay.
Face mask
and
will
fix it
get
like
changed.
that.
Face mask will get changed in the near future. Also, I don't know what's your gripe with the NFL officials?
Because they're bad at their jobs and they're getting paid like part-time employees.
What do you think they get paid?
They're getting paid well for being part-time employees. That's not what I'm saying.
They work 16, 17 days a year, dude. And they get $250,000 for 17 days of work.
I'm just saying right now, if you had full-time employees and this is their passion and their job,
$250,000.
Yeah,
dude.
it's just I don't think it's that much. I don't think that's what the head officials are getting paid. That is not what all the officials are getting paid.
Casey, I don't know if you pull it up. I just sent it to you in the chat. I don't know if you have it ready to go or not. The perception is, and again, everyone talks about all, the league or the officials always benefiting the Chiefs. And I'm not pulling this up to say, you're wrong or anything like that, because the perception is that, yes, the Chiefs get every single call. But the 33rd team on X, they put this out there that the Chiefs have actually gotten the fewest help from the refs since Mahomes became the starting quarterback. All right. Since 2018, Kansas City, I feel like Jacob just pulling out all these random stats or whatever. But since 2018, Kansas City, they rank first in total penalty yards. They have more penalty yards against them than any other team in the National Football League since Patrick Mahomes has become the quarterback. They're 21st in total penalty margin. All right. And then you get into the EPA for, of course, the offensive penalties committed, defensive penalties committed. They're dead last, second to last in both of those. Now, here's the thing about officiating. We always feel like our quarterbacks never get the calls that they should get. I guarantee you there will be Chiefs fans. I guarantee you if we tune into Sports Talk in Kansas City, they'll on a Monday following a game or a Tuesday after Monday Night Football, they're complaining about probably the calls that they didn't get. We always think our teams are never officiated properly. I think that's just part of it. The other thing is, too, the Kansas City Chiefs, outside of our teams that we watch, we probably watch the Chiefs more than any other team out there because they're on Sunday Night Football, Monday Night Football, Thursday. They're displayed more than any other team. Then when we get to the playoffs, they've played deep into the postseason more than anybody else over the last 6-7 years or whatever. So we've seen more of them. We've watched more Chiefs football than the Bengals. As the second most team that we've watched behind the Bengals is the Kansas City Chiefs. So we feel like we see it more. I guarantee you the Ravens, everybody else, they get those same type of calls. The Bengals get those. I'm a Bengals hater, right? When I watch the Bengals, there's calls that Joe Burrow gets, and I'm like, of course he's going to get that. But you guys watch the game and say, oh, he doesn't get that call. And I understand that too, because I think we just all do that. I think there's a psychological side to how we view games. We never think our team gets enough calls. And then the players, the rivals of the teams we follow, we think they get too many calls. I just think there's a sweet spot in the middle. The NFL doesn't benefit from pushing Patrick Mahomes through. If anything, I've brought this up before, the NFL needs new blood to win Super Bowls. They needed Jalen Hurts to win one. They needed Joe Burrow to win one years ago. They need Lamar to get one. They need Josh Allen to get one. If there's any teams out there that I think that the officials or the league would be pushing through, I think it's one of those elite quarterbacks. I think they're tired of Patrick Mahomes hogging all the rings. They need new blood to start being true competitors to Patrick Mahomes out there. I just don't see the Chiefs being the team that they would push at the end of the day.
Yeah, the push thing that the NFL has, I
don't think they push at all. Yeah.
Right, you're right. Yeah, that's ridiculous notion, period. But you're right about a psychological factor of remembering things and because we've all done this as former athletes, as watching sports. When a team is perceived better, right? They've won so much. They won Super Bowls. They've been the AFC Championship, and they've been winning World Series. Whatever it is, whatever the team at the top of the mountain is, when you play them, you really put a magnifying glass on how you didn't win, right? Because the team is so good, everything's got to go right, and when something out of your control doesn't go right, it feels like everything is stacked against you. It feels like people are out to get you. I don't think it's that way at all. It's just how we remember. It's just psychology and thinking that, hey, it's hard enough to beat the Chiefs. Now we don't need these two personal penalties affecting the game as well. But so be it.
I got a stat. Patrick Mahomes, and this is data since 2009. Patrick Mahomes has 31 roughing the passer calls. That's in what? That's 131 games. I don't even know. I don't think that includes the postseason. Up ahead of him in this list, Drew Brees, Tom Brady, Tannehill, Cousins, Rodgers, Stafford, Wilson, Fitzpatrick, Ryan. Obviously, a lot of those guys have played significantly more games than Mahomes, so we'll throw them out. The only other quarterback that has roughly the same amount of roughing the passer calls as Patrick Mahomes since 2009, since this data became relevant, is Josh Allen. It's Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes, and then it's not even close.
Yeah, but how many of those are actually roughing the passer calls? I mean, the teams are literally – I mean, because a lot of the best way to stop Patrick Mahomes, I mean, it reminds me of the Michael Jordan days where, well, we can't stop Michael Jordan, so we're going to come up with some little tagline and call it the Jordan rules. When there was no significance to the Jordan rules, it was just go knock the hell out of him. I think there's just a lot of teams that, hey, when you have a chance to put a hit on Patrick Mahomes, you got to do it because your best chance to stop him is to knock him out of the game. I think that's why Joe Burrow gets hit so damn much too. Correct. Now, your argument, and I get your point, well, how come Joe Burrow's not up that list as well? For a guy, and that's a fair argument, for a guy that got sacked 70 times the year that he led a team to a Super Bowl, for a guy that gets hit as much as Joe Burrow, I'm surprised he's not as high up on that list, to be fair. So I see where you're going with that, because I would expect Joe Burrow to be higher on that list. With as much as he gets hit before throwing, after throwing, all this, you would think he'd be higher up on that list for the roughing the passer penalty.
I'm trying to find Joe Burrow on this list.
I don't – listen, you are also right about –
Joe Burrow has 14.
And he's played, 3 less years than Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes. So, yeah, there's a lot more called. I don't know. Kenner, you're also right in that these defensive players, they are cold-blooded killers. They have made a living. They have made a career. They have made their life out of being vicious. And when they're told that a guy on the opposite side is great and otherworldly, when you get a free shot on them, sometimes you take it. And it's not always a good idea. It's not always a good idea to do it. But when you get your shots and you're a cold-blooded killer, you go after it. Right, you try to lay the hit because unfortunately, if you take them out for at least a series, you can win a game because of that. So I don't know. There's a lot of things that go into this. I think it's also just silly to think that the NFL is telling refs, hey, we got to get the Chiefs into the Super Bowl.
Yeah, can I throw my hat in the ring in this?
Love that hat because it's a Notre Dame hat.
Yeah, one of the things that I don't think we're also thinking about that. 33rd team since 2018 stat. They've been 31st in defensive penalties committed, 32nd in offensive penalties committed. The Kansas City Chiefs and Andy Reid push the line. They toe that line. I don't know if you remember last season when, who was it? Not Jackson. I can't remember the tackle, but he was lined up like way far back and they wouldn't call a penalty on him for forever long, and he was kind of false starting. Like, they constantly are trying to find ways to toe the line, which is a mark of a good team. They're trying to find ways to bend the rules as much as they possibly can. Kudos to them for, doing so, and they get penalized for it. But when it mattered most, I would love to know when it's a big game, when it's a primetime game on 3rd and 4th down, when are they going to – how many times do they get those calls? Because I do think that the perception is that way because of those big moments on primetime, on the big stage, and they happen a lot. Mm-hmm. I don't think I've watched a Chiefs game this year where there wasn't a egregious penalty called that extended their drive or gave them opportunity to score points. And it is affected, at least the mindset for myself, and I'm sure for many, many other people. I wonder what those stats are. 3rd and 4th down in prime time. How often do they get a penalty?
I don't know that. But listen, guys, it's Trent Williams gets away with holds. Justin Jefferson's going to get more DPIs called him on our defensive holding. Same with Jamar Chase. Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, they're all going to get more roughing the passers called, or they're all going to get more, personal conduct penalties just because that's what we do. For whatever reason, psychologically, for whatever reason, we give people that are already perceived great more benefit of the doubt than maybe they deserve. And that's just what it is.
The other thing, too, to keep in mind, the reason it also, especially this season with the Chiefs, I mean, you go back to that, when they beat the Bengals, that pass interference at the end. 11 of they had 11 one-possession games this season, too. So it's not only are they playing a lot of primetime games, they're playing a lot of games that come down to the final moments. So a lot of the calls that are called late in the game are magnified, and it just feels like, of course, they get that call. And sometimes we erase logic. Sometimes we'll watch a blatant hold or a blatant roughing the passer, a blatant pass interference, And we get mad that the call was made just because it benefits the Chiefs. And I think that plays a role in this too. If the Chiefs are blowing out teams, I don't think we're talking about these as much because there's not as much on the line because the game's decided. But I think like that pass interference against the Bengals, that pissed people off because obviously your team lost, but it's like the moment of the game, the leverage of the game. The game was on the line, and then they throw the flag in that particular situation. I get what it just seems like they get a lot of calls in their favor. But Casey, I'm with you because that's what I was looking up. I wanted to look up like the high leverage penalties, like, when the game's on the line, like under 5 minutes in the fourth quarter, overtime, whatever, one possession games. I would like to know what those are as well, because I think that tells more of the tape than anything. Either way,
I think
right.
and I don't mean to this isn't to take away from the Kansas City Chiefs. This is to add on to the fact that they are the beneficiaries of, I would say, significant help by NFL officials. They've done a great job. They have 15 wins this season. They haven't scored 30 points once. They're one of 3 teams this NFL season to not score 30 points. They still find ways to win. Patrick Mahomes is having the worst year of his career. They win 15 games, arguably 16 if he decides to play in that final game. So I'm not taking away anything from the Chiefs, but it's just a fact that when you play them, you have to legitimately play to perfection, or you're going to get screwed. And that's a blatant problem. That is a fact. That is an issue.
I think that's been the way for
but
sports
it
always.
But it doesn't fix it. I'm not saying it doesn't mean it's right just because it's always happened that
well,
way.
I don't think it's like a culmination of. I don't think it's because you're going to get screwed. I think it's just the margin of error to beat the Chiefs is this. It's this thin. To where for our beloved Bengals, love them to death. It's huge because their defense can't stop anybody. When you play a team that is the back-to-back Super Bowl champs and the betting favorite to win a third in a row, be the first team to three-peat, the margin of victory is this thin. So it only amplifies, which is what Kinner's saying, which is what Elliott's saying, which is what Casey. We're all in agreement to some point. It just makes it that much harder to beat those teams, and that comes with the territory of winning a lot. I guess it's just like it just is. It's just hard to beat you.
All right, this is Off the Bench presented by United Dairy Farmers, Chatterbox Sports on YouTube, ESPN 1410 Wing AM in Dayton. Again, so the AFC, NFC championship games are set. Obviously, you'll have an NFC East championship match between the Eagles and the Commanders. Jaden Daniels against Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts looking to get back to the Super Bowl for the second time, and then Jaden Daniels looking to do it as a rookie. How cool would that be if he's able to pull that off? And then, of course, Josh Allen against Patrick Mahomes, the Chiefs against the Bills. 2 really good conference championship matchups coming up this weekend. I can't wait for that when we get there. All right, we'll step away for a few moments. The Dodgers just continue, like their roster set. As Reds fans, we're sitting here waiting for them to do more and more. I know, Reed, you're not a Reds fan, but you know how the Reds, how we are. We're sitting here waiting for them to do something. You get Terry Francona. You think, oh, man, you didn't bring him here just to operate as is, right? Like you're going to do something. They're not doing much. But then the Dodgers, are they doing too much? Are the Dodgers truly hurting the game? Who's hurting the game more? Is it an organization like the Dodgers who are just hoarding every talented player out there? Or is it a team like the Reds and the Pirates who just refuse to spend money to better their roster? We'll talk about that when we come back. We're Off the Bench next. All right, and we are back Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers, Chatterbox Sports on YouTube, ESPN 1410 Wing AM in Dayton. National championship game tonight. The college football season will wrap up after Notre Dame and Ohio State go head-to-head. 1410 ESPN Radio, Dayton's radio home for Ohio State football. Pre-game coverage will start at 6. Kickoff at 7:30, and that's coming up here later on tonight. And we'll get into some our predictions and all that to close out the radio side here shortly when it comes to that national championship game. But I want to talk baseball. The new evil empire seems to be the LA Dodgers, and I see people say, well, just because they spend a lot of money, it doesn't guarantee that they're going to win a championship, right? Like that was the big thing. People made a big deal about all the money the Yankees would spend, although that was a dynasty, right? And the Dodgers have spent a lot of money for years, and they have a World Series now to show for it. Like we've seen this for quite some time now, where just because you spend a lot of money, it doesn't guarantee you, to win a World Series. But it still doesn't mean that there's not a glaring issue where you have one team that is literally just giving out these insane contracts, and they're just deferring the money, and they're just, rubbing it in everybody's faces at this point. And everyone wants to make the Dodgers out to be the bad guy. I know we've slightly touched on this in the past, but the fact that every time we talk about the Dodgers before we even get to spring training, it's because they keep adding a big-name free agent over and over and over, all while us small market fans wait for our team just to add one. We wanted Teoscar Hernandez. We just wanted just one player, one of the players that you have that you feel good about. We wanted just one of them to make us feel like, man, we have a shot to win our division. You try to win a World Series, we're just trying to win our division over here. Just give us something, right? The Dodgers keep doing this. But at the end of the day, we're mad at the Dodgers for doing something that we wish our team would do. I know a lot of people think what the Dodgers are doing is hurting baseball, but I think when you have so many teams, people brag about this, like, man, the Dodgers have spent more than 10 of these teams combined. So who's the bad guy there? The Dodgers? Or the teams that have been told, hey, there's no cap. You can spend as much as you want. You're choosing not to, and we're telling the team that's doing that they're wrong. I don't know. I see both sides because the Dodgers are pissing me off. They're hoarding all the good players. It's not a good look for the sport. It makes baseball look bad. But the more they do it, the more angry I get at the Castellinis, the more angry I get at the Pirates, the more angry I get at these franchises who they just try to come up with every excuse possible not to spend money. Well, I look at the Dodgers who are just finding every single way to defer every dollar and to spend as much money as they possibly can. I want to be mad at the Dodgers, but I'm not. I can't be mad at a team that's trying to win and spending money to win, all while being mad at my team for not doing it. That would make me a hypocrite. I'm jealous, if that's what you want to call it. I'm jealous. I think that the Reds and the Pirates are bad for baseball. I don't think that the Dodgers are.
Okay, here's what I'll say. The owner of the Cincinnati Reds, roughly, has a net worth of $400 million. The Dodgers roster payroll this year, $500 million plus. It's unrealistic to expect our ownership group to spend $100 million more than he has in his bank account. It's borderline, it's not fair. Now, here's what I'll say, because I'm not going to, you know me, Justin and Reed, I am not going to defend the Reds owners at all. They've done an objectively terrible job since taking over this organization. The Reds are a bottom, probably 5 organization in sports since the year 2000. That's a result of poor spending, mismanagement, and borderline just terrible ownership. Terrible. Saying that, the Dodgers are spending $70 million more than the next highest team. They've spent $375 million, again, deferred money nonsense, $375 million this year. And they're not done yet. This is terrible for the sport. They're killing the sport. I am mad at the Dodgers. I'm more mad at Rob Manfred and the owners in general, because the fact that we're allowed to have owners buy teams without money is kind of a joke, because there's a blatant issue there. Now, I'll say this as well. People are talking about the salary floor. I wanted the salary floor too, but here's my issue with the salary floor. Let's say you make that $125 million, $150 million. That means that every owner that's, the Pirates, the Reds, they're just going to hit that number and stop. While every other team spends $250 million more. So that doesn't really fix anything. The cap, you would say, is the fix. 100% it is. It works in every other sport. It's unanimously the best decision. The issue there is we've played so long without it, players aren't going to agree to it. So if you want to try to get them to agree to it, we're not going to be playing baseball for quite some time, because there will be a strike, there will be a holdout, and I'd borderline say that there's 0.0% chance that it would ever happen. I don't know if there's a fix. I don't know if there's a fix for this. But, Justin, there is a serious issue here. And you can't expect the Castellinis to spend $100 million more than they have in their bank account. It just can't. It's not realistic. It's not a realistic expectation. And I'm not, again, don't defend them. I don't defend the Pirates. I don't defend the Marlins. I don't defend the Tampa Bay Rays. I don't defend any poor-ass organization that doesn't spend money on guys. It's your responsibility as the owner of a franchise to take care of it, nurture it, pay for talent, build the stadium, have the stadium, make it a great experience for fans. I love going to Great American Ballpark, so I'll give the Castellinis credit for that. I think it's a good ballpark. But they don't have enough money to spend. The Dodgers do. I don't even think they're done. And this is going to continue until somebody stops it. That somebody's going to have to be Rob Manfred and the owners. One of these owners has to step up. Has to. There has to be a group of them that, like, you know what? Maybe this isn't fair. Maybe this isn't right that the Dodgers are spending $100 million more than a $300 million roster. Maybe there's something not right there. So I am going to be mad at the Dodgers. I am mad at Rob Manfred, and I'm mad at every other owner who bought a team that doesn't have funds to pay for players. That's who I'm mad at.
So we talk about the salary cap, and I'm not gonna do some tirade here, but we're seeing what happens when you just kind of let things go unchecked in economic markets here, without using the big capitalism and socialism words here. But like, this is what MLB is. Just, hey, the more money you make, the more money you can spend, and just keep it on rolling, keep it on moving on down the line. When it comes to winning equal or money paid equals championships, we haven't seen that in the MLB yet. We really haven't. Yeah, the Dodgers won last year, and yeah, the Rangers won 2 years ago. So we're getting there. But for 25 years now, we've seen the Yankees be a top 3 spending team. They've won 1 World Series. For 25 years now, we've seen the Reds. I guess the Red Sox won a couple of World Series, and the Dodgers spent a lot of money. They have 2 World Series in the last 40 years. But like, we haven't seen it be a 1-for-1 comparison of you spend the most money in the league, you win the championship. We haven't seen that because, as I've mentioned multiple times, no league in North American professional sports has a more number of champions, different team champions than Major League Baseball. That's true. In the NFL, we see the same, like the Chiefs are going to win again because when you get that elite quarterback, you keep winning. The Patriots with Tom Brady, you get the elite quarterback, you keep winning. Baseball, we see different champions because the game itself is a good filtration system on how random it is, that you can see teams like the Diamondbacks be a bottom tier team in terms of, you haven't won a whole lot, they don't spend a whole lot, boom, it has got hot at the right time, and they go to the World Series, and they're on the doorstep. We've seen the Rays be smarter than everyone else and consistently win. Now we have seen this money equal out to getting to the playoffs, right? The Yankees make the postseason every single year. The Dodgers win the NL West, one of the toughest divisions in sports, every single year because they spend the most money. So they get the opportunity to sit at the table because of how much money they spend. But we haven't yet seen it equal a 1-for-1 comparison of, hey, you spend this much money, you get to hoist up the Commissioner's Trophy in November, late October, whenever the World Series ends. When we start seeing that, like if the Dodgers rip off 3 to 4 straight World Series, then people are going to start going, all right, something's got to change here. The problem with that is the players' union is so strong. It is what often is called the strongest union in America. Not the truckers' union, not the Teamsters, the teaching union, nurse, none of it. It is Major League Baseball's union. Major League Baseball Player Association is the strongest union in America. And if they put a salary cap on the sport, a lot of those players are going to have to take a pay cut. A lot of those players are going to be cutting into their bottom line. So if the players are okay with where the game is heading, which is, yeah, one team might win a whole lot more, but we keep making our money. We keep getting paid more because those contracts keep on going up and up and up, and no one's making out like a bandit's more than the players. So for change to happen, it has to come from the Players Association going, hey, maybe it's not good for our sport, and maybe we're making more money now, but what happens if the Dodgers win something absurd like 15 straight World Series? Is our sport going to die? Are we no longer, are we going to see everything go away if we keep going down this path? At what point do the players step in and say, all right, it might cut into our bottom line to where we're not going to make $40 million. I'm going to be making 25, 28, whatever the top tier players are making. But you've got to say, maybe it's good for the sport. Maybe it's good for where we're at. But as I said, as I started on this whole rant, we haven't seen a 1-to-1 comparison of you spend money, you get the championship. When we start seeing that, if we see the Dodgers rip off 4 out of the next 6 championships because of all the money they're spending, which is a likely scenario, it's certainly not on the Mars, on Jupiter in terms of thinking. we might see some significant change.
Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers, Chatterbox Sports on YouTube, ESPN 1410, Wing AM in Dayton. But yeah, like nothing's going to change. And what's wild to me is that we don't hear owners speak out of why it's a problem.
100%.
My problem is like the Castellinis, and because Elliot, you're right. Like I can't expect the Castellinis to do what the ownership of the Dodgers is doing when you look at the money disparity, just in the overall net worth of the owners in general.
It would be physically impossible.
But at the same time, what I would like to see is, press clippings of Castellini's coming out just saying, hey, something needs to change in the sport. It just doesn't sound like anyone in baseball is pissed about it. Like we as fans care about it. We're upset about it, but the players don't care because they're going to get their money one way or another. Like Ellie De La Cruz, would he love to be paid by the Reds to stay in Cincy? Yeah, but Ellie knows I'm getting my money no matter what. He's not stressed about his future. It's just a matter of whether he's going to be cashing his checks in Cincinnati or in Los Angeles or New York. I mean, that's really, his life's not stressful at all whatsoever. Reds fans, we all suffer because there's no competitive bone in the ownership groups around Major League Baseball. NFL owners, they complain about coin flips before a Super Bowl. They complain about overtime rules. They complain about every little tiny thing to where we roll our eyes at it. What's the last thing Major League Baseball owners complain about? They don't. They're fine. They get their TV money up front, and they're fine. They treat their teams like 100%. Investments. That drives me up the wall. That's what I get most frustrated with too.
So this is really interesting that you brought this up because someone I don't know if they're lying or what's going on. I genuinely I stand by the opinion that if a majority of people are telling you one thing, it's probably the right thing. It's probably the truth. It's probably not always, but if the majority is on board, it's probably the truth. We have now seen multiple MLB owners. The Cubs just did it this weekend. Tom Ricketts' ownership group just came out this weekend, and they were asked point blank, you're the Cubs, you're the fourth biggest fan base in America. Why aren't you spending more money like the Mets? Why aren't you spending more money like the Dodgers? And Tom Ricketts' answer was so interesting because what he said was, we as the Chicago Cubs don't operate other than just to cut even. They said we just try to break even as a team. And I need an audit of these owners because I ain't buying it. And I've heard the Cardinals owner say this. I've heard the Cardinals owner come out and say we lose money on a year-to-year basis. I've heard the Orioles owner say that we lose money on a year-to-year basis. We're trying to break even. That's where we're at as a team. We're just trying to break even. I ain't buying it. I ain't buying it whatsoever. But that's what they all are saying. Every single one of them besides the Dodgers and the Mets. And the Mets, actually, shout out Steve Cohen. He doesn't even care about making a profit. He purposely, he's like, I'm going to bleed money into this team just because I want to see our team win a championship. He's a fan that just has a lot of money. But I ain't buying what these owners are saying when they say that they are not making profit on their teams. Because why would you be an owner then? It's a business proposition. Why would you be an owner?
The biggest flaw I have with Major League Baseball is that we have owners, and this is a fact, and they don't care. There's a lot of owners in Major League Baseball who do care. There are owners in Major League Baseball that do not care. The Reds, unfortunately, have an ownership group that don't care. And when you have that, when you see the net worth of our ownership, and you say, how is this group allowed to put together enough money to buy this team when we know they're not going to be able to compete? I'm not asking them to spend $500 million. I'm not asking them to spend $400, $300, $200. I'm asking them to get in spitting distance of being competitive. I'm asking to be a top half of the league, or at least right around it. And when I say right around it, I mean 16, if we're not going to go 15. 16 is what I want. And they're not on a consistent basis, and they're going to cry poor. And I hate when they cry poor, because my argument to them crying poor is don't buy the franchise. You don't have to buy the Reds. You don't have to be a part of it. You can leave. Sell the team. Make your money. Leave us alone. You don't have to be here. It pisses me off. We don't have money to spend. We're going to count and save pennies. We're going to get every bench player from the Dodgers and call it a productive offseason. They've signed 2 guys. 2. And we're going to try to win baseball games this year? It's a joke. There is a fundamental flaw in baseball, and it pisses me off. Good for the Dodgers owner. I hate him. I absolutely hate him. But guess what? To Kinner's point, they're spending every dollar that they have, and they're still not done. That's my biggest flaw, is that we have ownership groups, owners in this sport that are allowed to purchase teams with no intent to win. They're going to bring championship baseball back to Cincinnati. Okay. Let's try to make the playoffs first, and then we'll talk about it. Sorry.
Yeah, no. Trust me, you're saying what a lot of baseball fans feel, and that's the biggest frustration when it all, is said and done. But, you brought up the Reds, the ownership. They don't have the money that the Dodgers ownership does. But, let's look at the money that the Reds ownership does have. Are they spending a fair amount? Are they spending enough to proportionalize what the owner makes? If you look at the ratio of the net worth of the Dodgers owner to what they spend, is it the same proportion? Is it the same ratio of the amount of the net worth of the Reds ownership compared to what they spend? That's really, and I never once said, hey, I would love the Reds to spend like the Dodgers. That's just not realistic. But I don't even think the Reds are spending like they're technically capable of anyways. That's why the floor, would other teams still keep spending a lot? Yes. But if the Reds were forced to spend $150, how many more good hitters and defenders and pitchers would the Reds have if they were forced to spend another $40 to $50 million a year when it's all said and done? But
the Dodgers
either way.
That's the point that I was making earlier, is all these owners talk about, other than the Mets, I think literally every other ownership group other than the Mets say that we don't try to make a profit on our franchise. We're not trying to make money here. We're just trying to break even. Right? And their profit comes from the valuation of their team, not from the actual money they make year in, year out. And the problem is the Dodgers, just being in LA with their own TV contract and everything like that, they bring in $700 million a year, while the Reds maybe only bring in $250. So they're just not playing an equal game, which is what the NFL figured out a long time ago, is, hey, you put it all in a pot and you spread it out between each team, and this is how you get to spend your money for the year. And it created the greatest sports league that we've ever seen. Every team is one player away from if you're the Washington Commanders and you've been a terrible franchise for 30, 40 years, guess what? You're one player away from being in the NFC Championship in year one. The Reds have Elly De La Cruz, and they're still about 4 or 5 players away. So it is all just a sham at times.
Reed, you were a defender of the Dodgers. Are we going to still defend them this year?
Defended them how?
You're just a Shohei guy and you like the Dodgers.
I do like the Dodgers, yeah.
Are you still a Dodgers guy?
I like Shohei Ohtani, yeah.
Okay.
What do you?
I'm just asking.
Was that gotcha journalism?
No,
Did I get got?
gotcha. It's not gotcha
Oh
journalism. That's not gotcha journalism. I'm just asking if you're going to be a Dodgers guy this year, Dodgers fan.
Kenner, that question came with a smirk, and I get it now.
No, I didn't see a smirk. Elliot, you're good. You're in the clear. I promise.
I'll hammer. By the way, their win total is 104, so I'll be hammering that this season.
All right, Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. We have one more segment to go on the radio side, and we'll talk a little national championship. Ohio State, Notre Dame. What's the chances that Notre Dame makes this a close one tonight? We'll give our predictions when we come back. We're Off the Bench next. All right, and we are back Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. Chatterbox Sports on YouTube, ESPN 1410 Wing AM in Dayton. Lions head coach Dan Campbell said he's expecting Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn to take head coaching positions in the coming days. He does say he is prepared to lose both. Right now, again, with these teams that are knocked out of the playoffs, there's a lot of personnel and their staff that might be getting jobs elsewhere. But no surprise that we're going to be seeing Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn taking jobs elsewhere. Where do you think Aaron Glenn ends up, by the way?
I don't know where Aaron Glenn's going to end up, but I think Ben Johnson. I think Ben Johnson's Raiders or Bears I don't know where Aaron Glenn. I thought Aaron Glenn did a better job than Ben Johnson did this past year. I don't know. It's going to be really interesting to see what happens with the Lions, because that's kind of like the first test, right? After you become a good franchise, when players or people in the organization leave, how good are you after that? I think we could all agree that Dan Campbell doesn't seem like much of an X's and O's guy. Like, he seems like a rah-rah guy. So what's going to happen to that locker room when the X's and O's guys, Aaron Glenn and Ben Johnson, walk out the door? That's going to be interesting. But I don't know where they end up.
Yeah, if you're the Bears, by the way, if it's Mike McCarthy or Ben Johnson, the popular answer is going to be Ben Johnson. But, like, which one do you think will I like Mike McCarthy. If I'm a Bears fan, I want Mike McCarthy over Ben Johnson. That's probably not a popular take, but I feel like the Bears would be in better hands with Mike McCarthy than Ben Johnson at this point.
I'm 100%. I don't know why we belittle Mike McCarthy. I really don't get it, because you can stack him up against coaches that we do hold in high regard. Mike Tomlin being one of them. I know his name's kind of getting soured over the last few weeks, but like, he's got way better. He's got a better regular season winning percentage than Mike Tomlin. He's got a better postseason winning percentage than Mike Tomlin. He's got a better regular winning percentage than Pete Carroll, than John Harbaugh. Like, you can go down the names, and Mike McCarthy's pretty much at the top of everything. He's pretty much only south of Bill Belichick and Andy Reid over the past few years, and Sean McVay too. But like, I don't know why Mike McCarthy gets so belittled. It's probably because his former quarterback kind of stunk, Aaron Rodgers, and just belittled him at the podium every single week. But beside the point.
If you're a franchise that loves to have your running backs and wide receivers throw passes, hire Ben Johnson. He'll be great.
Trick plays and all that fun stuff. You know, you never know what you're going to get.
The fun thing about trick play is you usually have to have the talent to make that stuff work. So we'll see who he takes over.
They do. They had like not. Well, you're right. Whoever he takes over, those trick plays.
I mean, could you? I mean, I'm just trying to imagine Keenan Allen going deep, throwing it to Caleb Williams down the field, and seeing if that works in Chicago.
What about the Bill? I wasn't on the show at this time, but you remember when the Lions played the Bears like 5 weeks ago, and they're up by 30? And they do the coolest trick play, like, oh yeah, like it looked like a gimme touchdown, the fake fumble, right? Yeah. They pitch it and everyone dives on the ground like it's a fumble, and it was a gimme touchdown. And I'm just like, this is the best drawn up trick play I've seen in decades, and you did it in a 40-10 ball game. Like, what is that? Like, that's just not when you use it. Well, I'm beside the point. It's just Ben Johnson, I think, always had to be the smartest guy in the room. We'll see how he does at his next job.
Yeah, they pulled that off. I feel like his favorite movie growing up was The Little Giants, because it was pretty close to the annexation of Puerto Rico, is how similar that play was when it was all said and done. But real quick, as we wrap things up, national championship tonight, Ohio State. They are 8.5-point favorites, according to ESPN Bet. Ohio State, Notre Dame, national championship. It's been a long college. This has been a long college football season. It's a long playoff. This playoff just seems like it's gone on for quite some time. As Buckeye fans, though, having a blast. Notre Dame fans enjoying it as well. But college football ends tonight. Ohio State, an 8.5-point favorite. Many people out there, including me, I just don't get where Notre Dame gets the points. I don't know how they put points up. 10, 13 points max is what I see them producing tonight, and I think that'd be a good offensive night for them, considering how poor this offense could be at times and how good Ohio State's defense is. I like Ohio State winning it, routing Notre Dame. And I see people get defensive of Notre Dame, saying it's a national championship. They deserve to be here. College football national championship games, more times than not, they're not very good. They're not very competitive. I don't know the last time I watched a competitive national championship game. It just seems every year these turn into ugly blowout, one-sided affairs, and I think it's going to be similar tonight. I think Ohio State takes care of business against Notre Dame, not because I'm a Buckeye homer. I just think the talent gap is just so significant. If Ohio State comes out the way they did against Tennessee, against Oregon, against Texas, I mean, Notre Dame's a cute story, but being a cute story doesn't get it done on the field. We'll see what happens later tonight.
The last time a national championship game in college football was less than 2 scores was in 2018. Alabama beat Georgia 26-23 in 2018.
God, it's a great sport. I'm glad you guys keep telling me to watch it.
By the way, 2 biggest college football guys on this show today to
really iron out these details.
To preview the biggest game of the year for college football.
If you want me to give a take on what I think Notre Dame, because I think that most people are in agreement with you, Kenner, about this game, that Notre Dame really doesn't have a snowball's chance in hell of winning this game. I will implore this. If Notre Dame is going to win, their defensive line is going to have to play very well. And what I mean, and I know that all the things have come out, said they're going to play man because of how great their cornerbacks are. I think that if Notre Dame wants to win, they've got to kind of pluck at Ryan Day's ego a little bit. And they've got to almost empty out the box and say, come on, run the ball. Come on, tough guy. You got to run the ball, right? Keep 5-6 guys in the box. Keep it real light. Don't worry about it. And see if your defensive line and linebackers can get it done, because that's what we've seen now with three teams have done it against Ohio State. We saw Nebraska do it against Ohio State. That game went down to the wire. Michigan, I don't know if you saw that. I think that was this game, this one, 13-10. That's what happened there is they just bully. For some reason, Ohio State gets in their mind that they've got to be the tough guys, and they just can't do it. And then we saw it at portions of the Texas game where, Ohio State started trying to go run heavy once again, and it wasn't working. So if Notre Dame wants any chance, and I think it's going to have to be a low-scoring game, you've almost got to bait. You got to bait Ohio State into running the ball. And how you do that is keeping a lot of defensive backs out there and keeping the box light. Keeping the box light and try and beg them to run the ball.
Yeah, just dress like how Michigan dressed, and maybe you can trick Ryan Day into never throwing the football. That's the success for that's the path to success for Notre Dame tonight. Every game since, like I mentioned, 2018 has been a 15-point or greater victory. I'm going to make my pick right now, and I'm going to make this pick because I do want to root for Notre Dame in this game. I want to root for it. But I'm going to look silly if Ohio State runs them out of the gym. I'm going to look really silly. Really, really silly. I'm going to take Ohio State minus 8.5. I think Ohio State's the better team. I think they have the better roster. I think they have the better quarterback. They have just about every other – they're just better. They're better at every facet of this game. Casey, what was the stat that Tom had on his show about never getting holding calls?
Ohio State hasn't had a holding call since week 3 against Marshall. There hasn't been a holding call against Ohio State's defense. So the offensive line just prefer – yeah, they just never
get calls. They get screwed over. The whole league's up to them. Yeah.
Well, knowing that, I mean, that could sway my opinion, but I'm going to be a fool if I take Notre Dame with the points. I'm taking Ohio State. They've been the best team in this playoff by, I would say, a significant margin. I don't know if you think it's been remotely close.
Yeah.
I think they steamroll Notre Dame, unfortunately. I don't want it to happen. I just think they're better at every facet of the game. The only way they win this game is if turnovers. If Will Howard throws if Will Howard throws 2 interceptions like he did against Michigan, Notre Dame can sneak away with a very low-scoring victory. But I agree with Kenner, too. No way Notre Dame's putting up 30 points tonight.
No, it's going to have to be a low-scoring game. Here's also, you said the Irish are a fun story. And that is, like, as I root for Notre Dame, obviously, being a Catholic from this area, that's kind of how you are raised. And my friends that are diehard Notre Dame fans, everything was gravy, right? Like, you beat Georgia, you beat the SEC champions, Georgia, you beat Penn State, who went to the Big Ten championship game. You finally got the monkey off your back if you're Notre Dame and winning these big games, because it feels like they always got to these games, and you win these big games. And it would all be gravy playing in this national championship game if their opponent wasn't their opponent. Like, if it was anybody else other than Ohio State, I feel like Notre Dame fans would be like, right? Like, they obviously want to win the game. They're just like, who cares? Like, we got it this far. Like, we believe in Marcus Freeman's going to get us back to this opportunity. Who cares? But the fact that it's your neighbor, your rival, all these things. I know they don't play a whole lot, Notre Dame, Ohio State, but obviously the two fan bases go head-to-head all the time in arguments. So that's where it feels it's gotten personal all of a sudden. If it was Texas, if it was Oregon, if it was anybody else from the other side of the bracket, I think Notre Dame would just be like, yeah, sure. This was a fun season. Yeah. We'll see. We'll let the chips lay where they may. Now they're like, all right, we can't lose in the national championship to Ohio State. So I don't know. We'll see what happens. It's going to be interesting.
Yeah, and the thing I like about both of these, and I said my favorite storyline about this national championship matchup is the coaching that's been done to get them to this point, and not so much just about the X's and O's. It's about the mental side to this too. Ohio State loses to Oregon and they lose to Michigan, and the program was lower than low at that point. I don't know how they got that group to buy back in. I mean, the whole world was against Ohio State, just calling out Ryan Day. Ryan Day shouldn't even coach the first playoff game. I mean, it was getting to, that's why Kirk Herbstreit came out and talked about the lunatic fringe and all that. Right. We joked around with Jacob, who, his opinions probably put him in that conversation for that, of course. But the bottom line is how he got that team to buy back in and to follow his lead throughout the playoffs. And for him to admit that, hey, I called a dumb game against Michigan. We're going to stop trying to, be a run-first team. We're just going to open it up and lean into the talent. And they've looked like a different team ever since. I commend Ryan Day and his staff for doing that because I think that's pretty damn cool that they didn't let the egos get in the way. The egos got in the way most of the year, didn't get in the way here. And then you have Marcus Freeman. You lose to Northern Illinois. That's the worst loss of any team that was in the playoff. I mean, how do you, at home against Northern Illinois, a championship contender, you don't do that. Yeah. But he got that team to still buy in. They didn't let that define them. They didn't let them, let that loss just say, okay, we're not good. We're not going to have a chance the rest of the way. They use that as motivation. They kicked ass the rest of the year, and they've taken care of business throughout the playoff to get to this point. They both deserve to be here. I love both head coaches. I'm a big Marcus Freeman fan, and I think it's personal for him. He wants to beat Ohio State. That's his former team. And then, of course, there's the rivalry between the two programs to begin with. So I think this championship has the build. It has the brands. It has the teams. It has everything you need. I just don't think – I think once that ball's kicked off, the talent has to take over. That's where – this gets a little ugly, but I love the makeup and the storyline driving into this thing.
Isn't the 12-team playoff great too? Because you mentioned like these two teams that are in the national championship have the two worst losses in college football this year. They have the two worst losses in college football this year: NIU, Notre Dame at home, and then being 20-point favorites against your hated rival and losing at home for Ohio State, Michigan. But this 12-team playoff has allowed, 19 to 22-year-old kids to kind of like develop like they should be doing. You know what I'm saying? Like you make mistakes when you're 19 to 22, and sometimes you should be able to make a mistake and come back from it. And that's what both these teams do, and that's why I love the 12-team playoff is because it allows teams to make mistakes. We see it in every other sport that you're allowed to make mistakes and still be a great team. We're now seeing it now in college football.
All right, well, that wraps it up for us on the radio side. By the way, 37-10 is my prediction for tonight. 37-10.
Ohio State Irish put a whooping on them? Oh,
yeah, Notre Dame over Ohio State. Yeah, you heard it here first, yeah.
Casey, score prediction?
I'm going to go 17. I'm sorry. I'm going to go 27-17 Ohio State.
I'm going to go I'm going to go 35-20. Ohio State wins.
Man. You guys are, I'm not going to lie, you guys are all putting up some points for Notre Dame. I have Notre Dame. Let me see which one of these scores I like the best.
That fourth one is.
We'll take 13-10. Notre Dame wins. Riley Leonard, 1 of 1. Best quarterback in college football by 1,000,000 miles.
Has a chance to help his draft stock if he has one. He has a shot. We'll see.
That's right. That's right.
But that wraps it up for us. Until tomorrow, this has been Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. So they left us alone, Elliot. Just me and you.
Just me and you, baby.
How's it going?
I'm all right.
This is weird. This is weird.
That's okay. I'm all right. We had. I won't say what. I won't say. Listen, Kenner, I think me and you haven't had a one-on-one show yet. I know you and Jacob have had a couple. This is now our one-on-one, but we're not alone in this room. We have Notre Dame Fighting Irish alumni Casey McAllister in here as well. So we're ready to roll here. We got enough juice. Oh, we have breaking news. We have breaking news.
Yes. Yeah, we have some news.
Oh boy.
Let's let Casey do it. Casey, what do you got for us? The Cincinnati Bengals have hired. They've added a couple new coaches to the staff. Not a DC yet, but who do we have? What have they done?
All right, so we got some breaking news here for the Bengals. They have hired offensive line coach Scott Peters and Michael McCarthy as the assistant offensive line coach. I don't know much about these guys, but I do see that one of them was from the Browns, and one of them, I believe I don't know what that is. Boston? That can't be Boston College. But we're going to learn more about them here in a minute. Certainly interesting. If I just had to take away some quick guesses here, Scott Peters, maybe you could break that down for us a little bit. I know in the last 4 to 5 years, maybe not so much last year, but over the last couple years, the Browns' offensive line has been pretty good. So I would imagine that's a pretty good hire, right?
Yeah, so Scott Peters, new O-line coach, Michael McCarthy, the assistant, Jay Morrison put it out. I know you guys saw it in the Bengals thing too. Peters was the Patriots O-line coach this past season, and he was an assistant O-line coach under Bill Callahan for Cleveland from 2020 to 2023. So when Callahan left to join his son over with the Titans, that's where Peters headed over to be the O-line coach for the Patriots, and now leading the way for your Cincinnati Bengals. So there you go. And hopefully he has the ability to make you guys healthy. Your O-line gets healthy, it's a different conversation. But, hey, while you were gone, Bengals hire Scott Peters as their O-line coach, Michael McCarthy as his assistant. What do you make of this? Peters, the O-line coach for the Patriots last season, Browns assistant under Callahan for a few years. Splash, what is this? What do you make of this news?
When we fired Frank Pollock, I circled Scott Peters as the name I wanted first and foremost. I was like, if we got Scott Peters, this was going to be a great offseason. Like, that was
home run.
You guys obviously don't see what happens when the cameras turn off here, but me, Casey, Jacob, and Elliot, I mean, we have a little shrine to Scott Peters, and we're praying up that we get Scott Peters every day, and we got him. Yes.
I know nothing about Scott Peters. I assume he can't be worse than Frank Pollock. So let's go, baby.
Just reading up on him. There's some really good stuff in here. So just like Kenner said, he just did come from Foxborough. Michael McCarthy, his assistant, also coming from Foxborough. But if you look at his career, he was a former NFL guard, studied underneath Callahan. Not so much Brian Callahan, but his father. And he also did coach with Taylor with Nebraska, if I'm reading this correctly.
So we got Mike McCarthy.
So he's been around the block, and he's been around some really good coaches. Been a part of some really good offensive lines. He had a big part of developing Wyatt Teller, Joel Benito, both of those guys, all-pro, Pro Bowl type players. So this is a good move. And he's also familiar with the AFC North, so it's a great hire.
I couldn't agree more. Great hire. Scott Peters. Got Mike McCarthy, too. No one saw Mike McCarthy coming to the Bengals.
I mean, he turned down a head coaching gig to be an assistant O-line coach. So there you go.
That's right.
I mean, sky's the limit. Tomorrow, you think I think we all feel like it's – I mean, we had Jay Morrison on, I think, on Friday. Al Golden seems to be the popular name. I will say tonight's game has an interesting twist on the future of Al Golden in Cincinnati. I was reading a couple articles, like 11 Warriors and others. Jim Knowles is the athletic director. Sorry, Jim Knowles is the defensive coordinator for the Ohio State Buckeyes, and he's rumored to be taking the Oklahoma job. If the D.C. job opens up for Ohio State, the name that is rumored to replace him at Ohio State is the name that is being rumored, of course, for the Cincinnati Bengals, which is Al Golden. So tonight's game, there's going to be a lot of interesting dominoes that fall. I thought we could hear as early as tomorrow is Al Golden going to Cincinnati, and maybe he just outright wants the Cincinnati job over Ohio State. But I did find that interesting. I had no clue that Jim Knowles was being looked at by Oklahoma. He's from that area, and obviously with this championship run by Ohio State potentially, I could, if he leaves Al Golden to Ohio State, he'll have to pick between Ohio State and Cincinnati and the Bengals if that's the case. So who knows? But that is an extra wrinkle to keep an eye on from that development.
Yeah, I think Jacob brought this up when he was doing his bias thing towards Ohio State, beating the crud out of Ohio State. He's like, can you imagine the hiring Al Golden after they give up like a 45 burger or 50 burger in the national championship? It would just look bad optically. It's just like, I just get 50 points and the offense looked inept or defense looked inept. I thought the same thing when we had Jay on last week. And Jay was talking about how if Aaron Glenn leaves, one name that has been floated around up there is Lou Anarumo. Can you imagine like being a Lions fan and you're just coming off the best regular season in franchise history? You get a lackluster performance in the postseason, and your DC goes, and who do you hire? The DC of the team that had historically one of the worst defenses in NFL history this past year. Like the main reason that Joe Burrow didn't make the postseason, Lou Anarumo. Yeah, it's just going to be really interesting to see if anybody hires that guy. But yeah, Al Golden, we'll see what happens with him. I think it's I heard it was a done deal to Cincinnati, but I guess if you're deciding between being the DC and Ohio State or being the DC and Cincinnati, that literally just comes down to which do you prefer coaching, college kids or professionals? Like that's just literally the only thing that would come down to.
No, I think he's going to the Bengals. I just think that right now, if Jim Knowles does take that job, that probably opens up another option. But it sounds like the whole reason the Bengals have been silent on the interview front is because what's the point? They have their guy. Like I think that all the tea leaves have lined up for the Al Golden thing. With that. By the way, we talked about the Bears earlier with Mike McCarthy. Eddie George, a former Buckeye, but former NFL running back great, of course. Like he's interviewing for the Bears job today. Whatever you want to do with that information, who knows? But
I wish more teams did what the Bears have done during this head coaching search and just tweet out who you're interviewing.
No stone. Yeah, like they're turning over every rock.
What was it? Remember your franchise like 10 years ago? Now this story came out to be false, but at one point it was rumored that the Browns were looking to get Condoleezza Rice to be the head of football ops. You remember that story?
One of my favorites.
Oh my goodness!
I mean, can you imagine two-time coach of the year, Condoleezza Rice? Are you kidding me?
No, was it a head coach? Were you going to hire Condoleezza Rice to be the head coach?
You might as well.
I thought it was like to run player personnel, which would just, it would just be, so funny. We should hire more Secretary of States to coach in the NFL.
If Andrew Berry's out, I've been pulling for Joe Biden to be their general manager.
That's right.
I wonder what he would do in talking to free agents. He'd lure them to Detroit. He'd get them to sign a contract to be a Lion, and he's trying to convince them to be a Brown. It just wouldn't make any sense. But no, yes, Cleveland. That doesn't surprise me. I remember that vividly.
If Joe Biden got a head coaching job in the NFL, I would pay $50 just to see him throw the challenge flag because it would look so slow, and then the camera would pan to him, and he's just doing his Joe Biden like.
Yep, it's like you got to be quicker than that.
It would be so funny.
But all right, well that wraps it up for us. As of right now, Fitzy hasn't said anything different. He'll be on with us to recap the national championship game tomorrow. And we'll recap the national championship game tomorrow, and then we'll see what other silly stuff the Reds and baseball does and go from there. Anything else?
I think that's it.
Go Irish.
Irish. It's the fighting
All right.
Irish.
Adios. See you guys.
Bye-bye. Love you all.